Thank you for auditing the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who's going to be reviewing maybe the rap album of the year, Pray for Haiti by Mach-Hommy. Homie. Mach-Hommy? I've seen it pronounced a lot of different ways. He pronounces it Mach-Hommy. I will pronounce it Mach-Hommy. Now, before I even get into why this is one of the best rap albums of the year, I need to talk about the fact that I very much am an actual professor, okay? And one of the nice things I get to do, my university allows me to do, although I do not represent my university in any way on this channel, is I get to create classes. And as I mentioned in my video from last week about Kodak Black, which even though I don't like Kodak Black that much as a rapper, I think that's one of my better videos this year, I would like you to watch it, is one of two albums made by someone who is part of the Haitian diaspora. That is to say, people whose family has left Haiti and moved somewhere else, in this case to America. So I've got two Haitian albums in 1 week. Apparently this is sort of in honor of Haitian Flag Day. But what's interesting to me is that because I created this class about Haiti, which I call Haiti, the most important country in the world. And I'm not joking, I'm not speaking in hyperbole. If you do not understand Haitian history, you do not understand world history even a little bit, okay? You are completely ignorant if you don't take the time to learn about the history of Haiti. I don't mean to be so severe. I didn't learn about the history of Haiti until I created the damn class 3 years ago. Okay? So I'm not coming at you like I'm some kind of superior person. I just learned this, that by understanding Haitian history, you truly understand the real history of the world since 1492, okay? If you want some help, read Black Jacobins by C.L.R. James. Look that up, find it on Amazon, it's everywhere, it's a great classic. Or listen to the Revolutions podcast about the Haitian Revolution, that's also quite a good beginning. But because I teach a class on Haiti, anything that I do that's about Haiti is what we might call professional development, which is a thing that professors have to do. They can't just learn one thing 20 years ago and then hold on to that thing and then never let it evolve. The world changes, and especially when you're talking about a place as vital and as moving and as real as Haiti, you can't just allow your information to be in the past. So this is going to be a professional development video for me, in addition to a very in-depth review of Mach-Hommy's Pray for Haiti. It's funny because ever since I started this channel, I haven't really been doing what I'm supposed to be doing as an academic. As an academic, I'm supposed to be doing research. My field is actually 17th century French literature, so I should be publishing some of my thoughts on Corneille and Molière. But instead of doing that, I do this channel. I don't know. It might actually prevent me from getting a raise at some point, but at moments like this, where my professional life and my hobby merge, it's some of the best moments for me. So let me show you some work that I've done. Let me show you some of my PowerPoints that I show my students, okay? Well, actually, that's the last slide. Let me go back here to the first slide for today's class. So this is going to be when I teach the Diaspora, next time I teach this class, which will probably be in the spring, hopefully, I'm going to include this image of Mach-Hommy. This is going to be the face of the Haitian diaspora, and I'll show you who it replaces in a little while. You see, the thing about Haitian history is that in America we often think of Haitian immigrants, and we often think of them, and we use certain terms, you know. This is an image of Haitian immigration patterns, how they've really spiked, how people have fled the country. And to understand how devastating it is to the country, we have to think about who are these boat people. That is the Creole word that they actually use to define immigrants from Haiti, people who leave on boats. That is the actual word, boat people. The thing is this. If you watch a lot of media or if you watch a lot of sort of conservative pundits, they talk about this as though this is something that America has nothing to do with. That America is just, what did we do? We're not Napoleon. We didn't enslave Haiti. If you actually read the history of America and Haiti, it is a terrible, terrible history. U.S. Marines literally robbed the Bank of Haiti. U.S. Marines literally kept people in power just to make sure that trade would work well and that we'd get enough bananas. It was a terrible, terrible history of slavery, of occupation, of murder, of propping up regimes that would do the same to their own people. So these boat people are not something that are inflicted upon us. They are our duty to receive them. But the thing that I try to emphasize in the class is not just these sad facts, 264, what does it say here? Medical school graduates from the University of Port-au-Prince from 1957 to 1963. And of those, 3 stayed in Haiti. Okay, like that's the kind of brain drain that we have here, where we have terrible conditions, poor conditions, plus terrible governments that are propped up by supposedly better governments. We have this real just exodus. And the thing that happens, and that people don't understand, is that the nature of immigration is that it always, 100% of the time, and I know, I'm related to immigrants. My family immigrated to America a couple hundred years ago. I'm still related to immigrants. This is still the benefit of immigrants. This is still the benefit of immigration can be seen in the diaspora in America. So much great American culture comes from the Haitian diaspora, many people don't even know. Examples like Jean-Michel Basquiat, okay? Born to Puerto Rican mother and a Haitian father in New York. So very much a part of this diaspora, okay? Again, a lot of people left, so you know, in the 60s and 70s and 80s because of this murderous regime called the Duvalier regime. And that was very much supported by America, or at least we turned an eye, a blind eye at the very worst case, and it made the situation unlivable for the people there. He was probably, definitely the greatest African-American artist, and I would say top 5 American artists, just period, up there with Warhol and Homer. And his style is very interesting. And if you know hip-hop, if you know rock and roll, you've seen Basquiat everywhere, okay? Here's some of his work about Haiti. It's actually quite interesting. It talks about loans, because you see Haiti has to take loans to pay back other loans, and then they have to pay the VIC on those loans. And Haiti has been, ever since its freedom, ever since it was the first ever successful slave revolt in history, the rest of the world has been punishing it, trying to make sure that it never thrives. Because if it thrives, it indicates maybe slavery was not good, right? So, a lot of his work does actually touch on Haiti. Not a ton, but a lot of it does. I would say Jay-Z has done more than anybody to popularize Basquiat, at least since Warhol in the early 80s, partly because he raps about him so much. He talks in his songs about the yellow Basquiat on the wall. So this example of diaspora is good, and when I talk to my students about it, I also talk about rap examples, like Wyclef Jean. When I was in college, 4,000 years ago, this album came out in 1997, And here's a great example. Born in Haiti, moved to Newark, New Jersey, which, by the way, is also where Mach-Hommy is from, and he just is able to rap in English and in French and in Creole. And in this way, he is showing the strength and the power of Haitian music and Haitian culture in America. In 1997. So when I say this is professional development, what I mean is these albums came out in 2021. These albums came out in May 2021. These albums exist. This whole concept of diaspora and what does it bring is still being seen to this day. We are still feeling the benefits from these artists. Different styles, different genres, in many ways, mainstream mumble rap versus very intellectually stimulating crime rap. That's what we're seeing here. So thank you to you, my viewers, who are watching this and probably going, when's he going to talk about the album? But I had to give you a little Haitian history lesson first, because this is what we learn. This is why music is valuable. It puts us in touch with other cultures, it puts us in touch with other people, and it helps us develop empathy. It gives visibility. If you like rap music, the existence of people of Haitian descent is inescapable to you. You can't escape it. If you only listen to, techno or country music, there's a chance you will spend your entire life never once thinking about people from the country of Haiti. So let's get to the actual album review. I can't help. I'm a professor. My classes ended last week. I'm just doing finals. I got to use these elbow patches for something. So what's interesting about this album is that it's produced by Griselda, the Buffalo collective, and in particular by West Side Gun, who's sort of the brains behind the whole organization. And it's kind of a sequel to his album from last year, Pray for Paris. And there's an interesting, funny thing happening here with sort of the art history aspect. Because on the cover of Pray for Paris, he used a painting by the Italian artist Caravaggio, one of the true gangsters in art history. But the thing is that using Caravaggio is just like a sign of hey, I've been to Europe and I know a little bit about culture. Pray for Paris is an expression that was used in the wake of Parisian terror attacks from a couple years ago. But really what he's praying for is that he gets to go to Paris, that he gets to be so big that he goes to Fashion Week. Whereas Pray for Haiti is a much deeper meaning, because this is an album that is partly about Haiti. He's apparently donating some of his money to Haiti. And instead of having Caravaggio, well, what's the cover? It is a play on a Basquiat work. This is not actually Basquiat, this is an imitation of it, because we see here that it's actually Mach-Hommy with his Haitian flag bandana over his face. But still, I'd say it's an important thing. It sort of shows that there's a message to it. It is literally saying pray for Haiti, right? When West Side Gun says pray for Paris, it's just an expression. When he says pray for Haiti, it's very serious. This made me think of one of the books that I make my students read in my class in Haitian history. People often ask me, Professor Payne, what's your favorite book? I don't have a favorite book. I have a lot of favorite books, and I particularly like reading plays. This is by the great Martinican author Aimé Césaire, who I mentioned in my last week video. A lot of repeats these times. The Tragedy of King Christopher. And I really suggest reading this as an interesting take on the tragedy of Haiti as a country itself. And what I find interesting is that this is the cover from the presse africaine, or Pensée africaine? What is it? Is it Presse africaine or Pensée africaine? What is the name of this press? I really should know that. Présence africaine, African presence. It's just kind of funny how similar these covers are, right? With this kind of weird imagery of Basquiat as being a symbol of, a sort of totem of Haiti. So who is Mach-Hommy? You know, I've been asked by many people to review Mach-Hommy over the last couple of years, ever since I started, actually the last year, ever since I started reviewing Griselda. Everybody knows I'm a French professor and that I love language and that I love very intelligent rap music that's also not pretentious. So like, everyone's telling me you gotta review it, and just for some reason I never have. So what's interesting about him is he is trying to be a pre-internet rapper. Like, he's a mystery. I don't know his real name. His lyrics are not anywhere. I couldn't find his lyrics anywhere. He's like not on Rap Genius. He's not on Twitter or whatever. He's just like a guy who raps. And he raps insanely well. A relentless flow. Sometimes monotone, sometimes sing-songy. He can like knows how to punctuate so that he's not just like dop, 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 dop. He's like dop, 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 and then he'll sing a little bit. Some in Creole, some in English. I think if anyone he reminds me most of, not in the way it sounds, but in sort of the quality, is actually Ghostface Killah. Because it's this relentless attack of words, and hard and violent and smart and silly and funny, but at the same time just like similes that you can't quite catch up on. And when you hear the song for the first time, it's like you're being served this great meal, and the plate, there's just like 30 things on the plate, and you're just like, I don't even know how I'm gonna get to the chimichurri sauce. I don't know, God, this is just gonna, like, it's so much to digest. I've listened to the album, I don't know, 6 times, and because I don't have the lyrics in front of me, I still feel like I barely even heard it. So that's who Mach-Hommy is, really great. I'm gonna be talking more about his usage of Creole in a second. I'm gonna have some of my coffee here. That's Creole with a K. And then we have West Side Gun, who's producing this, and the member of Griselda. And I came up with a realization about West Side Gun, because every time he releases an album, I review it. And every time he does, I sort of kind of admit that I don't really like him that much as a rapper. I like him, but I like him more in short doses. So that's why it's wonderful on this album. He appears quite a few times, but he's not the star of the show. He's like he's a spice to the dish. He's not one of the main parts of it. But what this album made me realize is who West Side Gun really is. He's Puff Daddy. That's who he is. And I'm not really saying P. Diddy, but like, when you think about like Puff Daddy, like, why is Puff Daddy important? Is he a good rapper? Not really. Is he actually a producer? I don't think so. I don't think he like goes to the studio and like picks out beats. He's just someone who makes things happen, who connects people, who networks, who has a business sense, but not a business sense in the way of like 50 Cent investing in vitamin water and becoming a billionaire or whatever. Not that kind of useless business sense, but a way to use his vision to bring other people up and to bring people into the limelight who might not be there. I think that's sort of what West Side Gun is. He's like a Buffalo Puff Daddy. Buffalo Daddy. Buff Daddy? There's no way for me to end this joke that works. So he's able to like lend his name, but it's kind of an opposite thing, because at a certain point, you know, if you saw something that was produced by Puff Daddy, you just stayed away from it because of the whole shiny suits and all that and the popness of it. Whereas here, every time you see West Side Gun or you see Griselda, you know it's going to be quality. You know it's going to be something good, right? He's like maybe Puff Daddy or like Berry Gordy, you know what I mean? Like somebody who's just capable of putting people together and making such great music. And I say it every time I review something by the Griselda crew, we are living in a great moment and we just need to appreciate it. We just need to just throw our hands up and say thank you, because they have still never released anything whack. They are still releasing something great. Part of the reason why sorry, I'm trying to get the camera not tilted there. Part of the reason why is the production is just so consistent. It's so good. Every single song is in the same general register, slightly grimy, a little bit underwater, like very 70s, like 70s flutes and 70s horns and 70s strings, but just amazingly consistent, and it lays the best possible groundwork, the best possible landscape for the figure of Mach-Hommy to arrive and just rap all over the place. It's just wonderful. Now I'm ready to talk about a song. I'm ready to talk about the song, The 26th Letter. So for every album, I give my homework, which is a song which, if you don't know the album that well, this is the song I want you to listen to get an idea. It's a sample song. It's not my favorite song on the album, but I think it's the best example. So it's the first track, which is convenient. I'm going to put a link to it up there, okay? Feel free to click on it, come back afterward, or don't. Just get so lost in how good the album is, you listen to the rest. I'd like you to come back, though. And as a matter of fact, I would like you to like this video. I'd like you to smash the like bucket and subscribe. Because if you like Griselda or underground hip hop, I talk about a lot of it, not all of it. So like this song, 26th Letter, just puts Mach-Hommy just exactly the way you want him. Like he says, and then just goes. For the entire song, he just goes. And it's this really nice, dirty horn sound. The drums just like start to come in eventually, but never really take off. It's just this, and his relentless flow. Just your heart made of jello, Pop-Tarts, and marshmallow. Makes me hungry, but it's a pretty funny way of saying it, right? Your heart is made of jello, Pop-Tarts, and marshmallow. Locked up in the Bing, singing falsetto, hitting those Prince notes. He manages to rhyme just with his cadence, the word Prince notes and falsetto. I feel bad for my wife, the Dr. and Mrs., because English is not her first language, and so sometimes she has trouble with hip-hop music. And this is the hardest possible kind, because he doesn't rap with context. He just sort of puts words together and they sound great and they sound cool. So this one line, Mach-Hommy is an icon, end quote. Like, to be able to parse those words, Mach-Hommy is an icon, end quote. If I wrote that down, she'd be able to understand it. If I said it slowly, she'd be able to understand it. But just in the context of the whole album, of the whole song, of just all these words, it gets so lost. And that's the way that he reminds me a lot of Ghostface in the same way, of just this, what is the context? Like, what are we talking about? There's no story here. It's just awesome words delivered very well. I like how at some point he says, I have to dumb it down to a slow 50-cent flow, which I do kind of hear this sort of like 50 Cent like nature of his rapping, but so much better. And then just these really clever lines. First class or private, ain't no put me in, coach. So it's like a joke about put me in, coach, the idea of being on a baseball team or whatever, or basketball team, football team, like put me in, coach, but also put me in coach class, because he's on first class or private. And then West Side comes on. West Side Gun starts coming in. He starts talking about money. You ever have sand on your feet? I'm so rich I go to sleep, and when I wake up I'm richer. But this is the thing, you know, this is when I'm talking about Buff Daddy, this is what I mean. Like, he's not adding anything, but it's a nice break. The same way that when you're listening to Notorious B.I.G. and he's just going and going and he's super serious in his great voice, hearing someone in the back just going, ha ha, yeah, ha ha, like it just kind of breaks it up. And then goes back to another verse. So it's just this relentless song with this nice little break in the middle of West Side there. Keep waiting in this age of instant gratification. The only real commodity is patience. Mach-Hommy is also very wise, right? That's a wise thing to say. It's wise and it's true. The only real commodity to have is patience in this age of instant gratification. What I tell my students is when you have all the information in front of you, the real skill is discernment, knowing what's true, what's false, what's important, what's frivolous. But I would add this, I'm going to add that too there. The only real commodity is patience. Then he ends, and this is why it's such a typical song, with saying some Haitian Creole. Now some of you may think, hey, Professor Skye, you're a French professor, and Creole is sort of a, it's adjacent to French. There's some French words in Haitian Creole. I bet you understand some of it. No, that is an insult to Creole to think that it is that close to French. It is not. I pick up words here or there, but basically none. The name itself is a reference to the letter Z, which, upon some research after doing the Kodak Black album, is sort of a general term for Haitians in America that stems from a gang that existed in Florida, or still does, I suppose, called the Zo Pound. So I guess anything that is Z refers to Haiti, which is fine. I don't like the gang affiliation, but there you go. And then there's a weird discussion of how poor Haiti is, like from a news clip. And so there's also there's a real effort here, I think, to inform people, which we'll get into later. No Blood, No Sweat has these great swirling keyboards, very clever rhymes. Like he just has a whole series of rhymes of things that rhyme with X, back when Gore-Tex was a flex. And I remember when having Gore-Tex gloves really was like, hey, I've got the coolest gloves. My hands are never going to be cold. You kind of have to, grow up in a cold place to know that. But there was a time when I was in middle school where to show that you were cool, you flash that Gore-Tex. This is an example of one of the things about the album that's maybe great or maybe not great. Some of the songs just aren't really a song. It just sort of starts and ends, and it really just feels like an excuse for the bars. This does have a nice addition, though, of some voices in the back. And then we're going to have 3 songs in a row, all produced by Conductor Williams. Conductor. And this is a great example of why West Side Gun deserves credit. He deserves to have sand on his feet and to be making money when he wakes up, because he's doing some really great things here. Making these 3 songs all produced by Conductor Williams, who makes a pretty good argument for himself as being, the best producer in the stable of Griselda. I don't think he is, but I mean, he makes a good argument for him here. It just creates like a little EP in the middle of this LP. And it just has this nice focus to these 3 songs, all produced by the same guy, where the rest of the album is a little bit just this producer here, that producer there. So it's really nice, and I think this is very clearly the hand of West Side Gun helping to do this. So the first song is called Folie à deux, which is sort of like, it's a French term that just sort of means like, being, it means crazy in two, but it means like when you're doing something crazy and then someone's doing something crazy with you, and you sort of like lose your mind together so that like you don't have a check. You know what I mean? Like it's good to have someone as check. So anyways, it often refers to falling in love as well. So just a really cool warbled beat and a warbled like Mr. Rogers bell sounds. He develops it nicely with the B section, where there's kind of these bloopy arpeggiated keyboards. This is an example of a song that is more developed. That's not just one thing. West Side does an intro. This time he's actually rapping. He seems to be on sort of West Side Gun autopilot, but it's nice because, again, West Side is a great spice to any kind of rap meat. I need a better metaphor. But he, because like, you know, when you just have this great voice just rapping straight, having someone doing actually does help to create some kind of dynamics there. Some spoken voice by Keisha, which is nice. And then just at the end, he said something, which is funny because my wife is the one who introduced Flonase to our family. It's great. You really stuffed up. You need a Flonase. One of the things I like talking about with hip-hop music is that rappers will say something and like you don't always know what it means, but if it ever is in your life, you just like it gets wrapped into your like the way you speak, you know? Like whenever I have fish, speaking of Ghostface Killah, I just quote, "We eat fish." And I've now learned that has something to do with cocaine. But when I first heard it, I was like, wow, Ghostface Killah is really excited about eating fish. I'm excited about eating fish. So now every time I use Flonase, probably for the rest of my life, I will have this repeated line, "You really stuffed up, you need a Flonase." Next track is called Mackerel Jackson, which is a the Haitian Creole, with a K, way of saying the name Michael Jackson. I don't really know why it's called that. I mean, there's a sample from the song Thriller in the beginning where he just says, "We're out of gas," the opening to the music video. But just great work from Conductor, with like the sitar sounds and pitched up vocals. A really cool, like, Time to Separate the Busters from the Charlie Browns. Great example. I don't know what it means. What is that? So being Charlie Brown is good? Or being Buster Brown is good? Who's Buster Brown? Is Mach-Hommy just saying stuff? Or does it all mean something? Can I go to Lyric Genius and find out the answer? Error 404, file not found, we won't know. So I'm just going to have that as another line in my head. I'm trying to separate the Busters from the Charlie Browns. I'm just going to say that, you know? When I'm doing my grading, okay? When I'm going over and I'm looking through the participation grades, right? You know, who's speaking in class, who's showing up. That's the way I separate the Busters from the Charlie Browns. You are a Charlie Brown. You are a Buster. I also like, too, like, he's very clever. You know, he talks about, I only mess with divas, and then he rhymes that with Lupita, which makes reference to Lupita Nyong'o, the actress and model, and just kind of lots of nice wordplay here. Then we have the second Conductor tag, which is, "Conductor, we have a problem," which I didn't know. I looked it up. It comes from this, like, viral video of some dude freaking out on a train in DC, just pressing the button to stop the train. "Conductor, we have a problem. Conductor, we have a problem," which is really funny until you realize it's probably racist. He probably just saw, like, a non-white person and got scared. As far as I can tell, that's what happened. But hey, Conductor Williams has taken it and made it his. We then get to the track, The Stellar Ray Theory. This is another nice, this is the third part of the Conductor Williams trilogy. Conductor. Nice jazz saxophone, really funky jazz drums. He sings a lot in Creole with a K. Weird, cool underground, like underwater sound. And it's just the way that Conductor mixes his beats is what I love so much, because there'll be just like very subtle differences from verse to verse, like different things turned up or slightly affected that really rewards multiple listens and just makes you marvel at his skill. He has a polish, which is interesting because part of the Griselda aesthetic is things feeling gritty, but he knows how to polish the gritty. I'm going to include some of the second verse here because I haven't really been able to include lyrics. I did find lyrics. I found them on Reddit. Someone named Syophan2K provided all the lyrics to this song. And so I'm just going to read some of them because they show his skill, but it's so hard to catch because the way that he raps, he just keeps coming at you. Just like, stop talking. I can't even catch how great your last verse was because you're right here. Trouble on my mind, at least I'm not in a bond with the things to which these deaf, dumb, blind rappers is confined. When they shit flops, they be hitting the gun line. 'Cause they know if the sun don't shine, the sun don't shine. All this rain make it harder for them. Only so long fake thugs can pretend. You ain't live it, you witnessed it from your folks' pad. You scribbled it in your notepad, created your life. Never was impressed with lyrical matter. My shit built upon the backs of pure facts and empirical data. Lyrical matter, my shit brought upon the backs of pure facts and empirical data. There's a reason I'm a rap critic and not a rapper. While strategizing, chill out with the categorizing. You spend too much time fraternizing. Wonder why you piss poor. Be on message boards, planting seeds of discord. Go get in your front row seats for the greatest show on earth. Next 40 days and 40 nights sure gonna hurt. So just all these great lyrics, like very clever, very funny, like at your folks' pad, scribbled on your notepad, just nice kind of double, rich rhymes, multiple syllables matching at the same time. Rhyming matter with data, the way that it works so well there. And then talking about you're on the message board planting seeds of discord, and like Discord is a message board, but it's also a state of like unrest, and just all that in there. Based on what I read on Reddit, and I don't do much research, but this is the only place I could find lyrics. This is seen as a critique of Jay Electronica. This reference to 40 Days and 40 Nights when he recorded his album. The Stellar Ray Theory sounds like an intentional play on the shiny suit theory. But I don't know why they'd be criticizing each other, because this album actually reminds me a lot of the Jay Electronica album. Not in its theme, but just in the fact that it's like an older rapper who's been underground for a long time, who hasn't gotten his day in the shade, right? Like we're talking old rappers like around my age, right? I think Mach-Hommy's 38, I'm 43. basically the same age. You know, and Jay Electronica in a similar way, like they're not like young bucks who are up and coming, you know, like they've been around for a long time, and then they're using somebody else's weight and success to hopefully help them get the recognition they deserve. Now, West Side Gun is not Jay-Z in this case, but I do think there's kind of a similarity between these older, underground, idiosyncratic, mysterious rappers. So I hope they aren't beefing, because it seems to me that they belong in a similar category. We get to the next track, Marie, which is the French way of saying Mary. You can barely tell. This is a different kind of homework. When I talk about the polish of Conductor Williams, listen to this track, which is not produced by him, but is still very much in continuity with the rest of the production on the album, right? But it just lacks that certain polish. It's got the 70s strings and the faraway drums, but somehow it just doesn't quite have that same level of interest. More sung lyrics in Creole, mixing in with sort of a callback to Tupac and his song Hail Mary. Has cool, like slightly different verse in the second. The second verse has a slightly different flow, which is interesting. We then have a skit, L'État Yo. No idea. I mean, I think I hear Oui, je suis d'accord, I think in there maybe. You know, yes, I agree, but I can't really translate it, because I don't speak Creole, not with a C or with a K. Speaking of a K, we have the song Criminel, which is weird because the one word of Creole I thought I knew was bandit, which means criminal in Creole. But I guess maybe criminel also means that. I can't win out here. This is maybe my favorite production. It's not by Conductor, it's by Nicholas Craven. Has this cool, like, kind of old Kanye style voice sample of someone saying, of love, but has this organ and this loop. And it does the thing that I love when rappers do, where they take a loop and then every once in a while they extend it out longer than the initial sample. At times even the voices extend, the guitar extends. The way the guitar interacts with the organ, like at a certain point, after the second verse, it's just an amazingly satisfying sound. It's really good. It opens with just very cool, very crazy Creole being spoken. I can't read it, understand it at all. And all the way throughout, there's these ad-libs in Creole. I think I heard the word manger, which means to eat in French, so maybe that's that. But just this is probably my favorite song on the album, actually, because his vocal timbre is so interesting all the way through, slightly strained, but rapid fire. And then the chorus has this insane thing where he's singing Criminel, and something in Creole, and it's very low, and then there's like way in the back a higher pitched voice singing the same thing, and then you have the of love sample going all the way through, and then like these female singers singing the same thing, and eventually there's like this he's singing and they're singing, and all the production all comes together, and it's pretty hard to know what's happening or not. I don't know who Nicholas Craven is, but good job. You managed to get the production of the album on an album which is very well produced. Pen Rail is the next song. Another kind of partial beat, one that doesn't quite develop or have the same interest as others. It's nice, kind of a guitar and just the sample of someone saying run away. Very relentless, very abstract voice. Again, the flow, just words and words and words, like espadrille. Did he just say espadrille? But it's just really cool. Like I love listening to him rap, because it's just, even when we don't understand it, it just feels so good. And the way what happened to your barbershop quar, pouring out a quart, like a barbershop quartet and shortening quartet to quar, and then talking about pouring out a quart, meaning you're pouring it because they're dead, but you're referring to a rap group as a barbershop quartet. And like, you can tell he's having fun and that he's proud of what he's doing, because at a certain point he just goes, he has himself saying, oh my God, he's doing it again. Like, that's what he is. It's just like, each song is just like, oh my God, he's doing it again. It turns out, by the way, this is his 18th album. So I have some work cut out for me. If you are a Mach-Hommy fan, please tell me, like, what else is this good? Because, damn. Again, the Diaspora, okay? What do we get? What do we get? Well, we get this. I mean, not only is it our duty as human beings to recognize the pain and suffering of other people, no matter where they happen to be born, but we also get this music. Murder Season is an amazing song with West Side Gun. He just sings a lot in here. It's cool, kind of synth organ line. It's nice because like the ad-libs, the do-do-do-do, all that stuff by West Side Gun, I didn't hear it that much on this album. It's nice hearing it. I love the contrast by Mach-Hommy and West Side Gun. I hope they release an album again. maybe West Side could release an album where he does 80% of the rapping and Mach-Hommy does 20%, but it's a great interplay between them. Sold more rock than Charles S. Dutton. He says that line at some point. And this is the thing about older rappers, okay? Older rappers are a weird thing in our society, right? Rap is often based on what's new and what's hot. More so than rock and roll, more so than techno, right? It punishes age the most. Fortunately, the generation that killed old school hip hop by ignoring them completely, the Jay-Z's and that generation, which didn't really pay that much homage to whatever Africa Bambaataa and Grandmaster Flash and all that. Fortunately, that generation managed to grow, and we stay with them, and we're able to honor them. And so we do have older people here. But rappers like this, who've never been that famous, it's interesting because they need to keep going. And the reason why is references like this. Sold more rock than Charles S. Dutton. That is so damn obscure. It's about selling crack, rock. But Charles S. Dutton, great actor, maybe best known for his role in Alien 3, at least by nerds like me. But he had a great TV show about being a garbage collector, a sanitation engineer, in New York called Rock. And it was this great show about a working class black family. I remember watching it. I remember it helped me in the same way that The Cosby Show helped me to humanize my African American compatriots in this country by seeing them in a different way, not as either rich or poor or whatever it was, but just a normal working class family. Kodak Black doesn't know who Charles S. Dutton is. That's not a good nor bad, but I think it's why we should really appreciate and encourage and support rappers who are over the age of 30, because they're able to do so much with the words that they have. Wow, that was a lot talking about Charles. This is a long video. But I did the whole slideshow in the beginning. Feel free to put in the comments if you think I do too much of the not reviewing stuff. But I just gotta be me. The next track is called Magnum Band, with a good feature by the god Fahim. I'm not gonna talk too much about that. This is the most complicated beat by someone named Messiah Music. This weird, busy piano that's twinkling with these super compressed drums, lots of vinyl hiss everywhere, and a weird, odd jazz bass. And I love this idea too because he says in the beginning that he had to come down from Mount Olympus, and he's able to give this sense of like he really is this great rapper who's like honoring us by his presence. He has this funny thing where he says, I put the biscuit to your teeth like England. So like English people eat a lot of biscuits, and biscuits is also a word for guns. So it's like, I put a biscuit to your teeth like England. Ain't no digestive. So that's that also shows, not only is he like an older rapper, he's pretty worldly. Because knowing that English people eat digestive biscuits, I don't care what race you are, how much education you have, the majority of Americans have no idea that English people eat digestive biscuits. Digestive biscuits are biscuits which you eat and then immediately have to run to the bathroom, in my experience. So like, it's pretty far out there that he's doing it. It is interesting. I do wish there was more reference to food. I'm going to bring back my slideshow, actually, to talk more about the joy of teaching this class. Just in case you don't know, on New Year's Day, they eat something called the soup jumu. And this was a pumpkin soup which was only served to the masters. And after they were freed, after the slaves freed themselves and started a republic and an empire, and a republic, complicated history. After they started that, this soup became a symbol of their liberation. There's even an entire documentary about this soup. And my wife made this soup for my students. And we brought it in and we ate it on the last day of class. That doesn't really have anything to do with this. It's more just, the reason that I do that is that when you teach about a country, it is so easy to get lost in the pain and the suffering. And especially when you study something like Haiti, there's so much pain, so much suffering, so much exploitation, good people becoming bad, bad people becoming good, good people getting killed, all these things just constantly. And I try to remember them that it's more than that. It's also music, it's also food, and it's also a dance lesson, which I gave them. I taught them how to do the compa. Well, actually, I had a professor from our dance department. That's me dancing with my former Dean, as a matter of fact. That's kind of funny. So anyways, it's too bad that we have English biscuits. We don't have reference to soup jumu, because soup jumu is an amazing food that you can eat, and when you're eating it, you are literally eating history. It's awesome. Next track is called Rami with West Side Gun. Again, cool jazz piano. Like the piano, like the notes are hit so hard that it sounds like the guy's just like putting his elbows on the keyboard. It's just really cool, shuffling beat, nice hiss. This is all by Camouflage Monk. It's quite good. Another reason you need older rappers, not just Charles S. Dutton, but says You're Selling Babies, Arizona. A reference to the Coen brothers' first movie, Raising Arizona from 1984. These are the kind of references which young people just don't get. Ends the song with West Side doing one of his traditional singing, Don't get your wig shot. And then we have a skit, and the skit is just an academic talking about the Creole language, talking about the way it's a language of exchange, about the regional differences in Haiti between the North and the South. And I talked about this briefly in my Kodak Black thing, but it is very important that you understand the importance of Creole. See, the importance of Creole is what kind of language can be created by people who have different languages and are forced to live together. In a very real way, Creole and Voodoo have a similar history. I'm just going to get into that just for a second, because it's one of my big pet peeves that in our woke culture, we still allow people to use the word voodoo to mean anything other than an actual religion that people actually believe in, okay? It would be like if you said, oh my God, look at that Judaism. Oh wow, that's such a Catholic thing, right? Like, we don't do that. We respect people's religions. Why don't we respect voodoo? Well, the same reason people don't really respect Creole. It's not really a language, it's just a spoken thing. Imagine if Martians, okay, came down to Earth and said, we need to enslave some humans. White humans are the ones to enslave. So they take people from Texas, Russia, Albania, Israel, Australia, Serbia, Finland, Estonia, Spain, New England, Canada, and they all put them to work on Mars. What language are they going to speak? It's going to be a whole bunch of stuff. What are they going to pray to? Well, some of them are Muslim, some of them are Christian, some of them are agnostic, some of them are Jewish. They're going to come up with some kind of thing that sort of resembles whatever the thing is that they sort of remember from Earth. That's what happened. That's what happened in Haiti. We just took people from all over the place and just shoved them all together, and they had to create some kind of civilization, some kind of culture out of that chaos and displacement. So that's what makes sense with voodoo. That's why it exists. It's not evil. It's not bad. It is other customs that are forged together. And the same thing with the Creole language. It is the result of French being dominant in the same way that voodoo is very influenced by Christianity. You know, like these things are dominant, but these other aspects are added in. And they are so interesting. You could just spend your whole life, and many people do, just studying these things. Because as this skit in this rap album, God damn, I love my job and I love my hobby. This skit in the rap album talks about the importance of the language. Do not underestimate it. Do not see it as a deformation. Creole is not a deformation in any language. It's not a deformation of English in Jamaica. It's not a deformation of French in Haiti. It is its own thing. And it truly deserves the amount of study that it's not getting. So, I don't know. Thank you, Mach-Hommy, for including this skit, which is not a skit, which just very clearly makes a case for why we need to take Creole and therefore Haiti seriously. Next track is called Au revoir, French for goodbye. Cool guitar-led sample, very developed, very raw-sounding bass. It's funny because it's a mixture of like English and French. Au revoir, and then P word, and then N word, bye-bye. Melanie Charles comes on to sing here, which is very nice. More 70s flute mixing in with Creole. He takes like all the way through, halfway through the song to start rapping. He does make a reference, shoot you 2 times like Moderna. I think this is the first time that the parallel between getting shots and getting shot has been used in hip hop. Stay tuned, because this is going to be everywhere, okay? You're going to hear so many times, shoot you like Pfizer, we're just going to hear it all the time. Then we get to the last two songs, which are unreal and awesome. Just some of my favorite songs on the album. Just great production, great rapping. Blockchain's the first one. Again, the sample's a little bit more developed. It starts with this like weird sample that slows down. He talks about don't forget the hyphen. And I don't really have that much to say. I just wrote, God damn, this is sick. Those are my notes. Those are my notes for the song. Your professor here, Mr. Smarty Pants, Mr. 45 minutes into the review. And what is my review of this song? It's good. We end with the song 10 Boxes, Sin Eater. My favorite drum sample on here, super cool, like a very boomy and bass drum sound, a weird voice in the back, these weird sort of distorted bells, and everything sort of develops on the second verse with the bass getting louder. I need lyric genius. I just need to be able to read all these things. Starting to see some labia majora, don't put your fat lips on me or my daughter. Like, what the hell is that? Like, why'd you say your daughter? Yeah, what is it? And he even ends the whole thing with some Old Dirty Bastard style singing, like we sings about 10 boxes. So there's my review. There is my review of Mach-Hommy. Thank you to all who told me I need to review it. Thank you extra to people who've sat around for 46 minutes while I'm talking. Hopefully you've had other stuff going on, you know? But I can't help it. The weird thing is, my classes last 50 minutes. And I'm basically at the 50-minute mark. So I can't help it. I love teaching. All right. Well, until next time, there's the camera.